Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you could just let us know where you're from, your name, where you're from, and what tech stack you're in. If you're a front-end developer, back-end, whatever it is, can you just let us know in the chat? That would be awesome. We're so glad that you could join us. So this is the second edition of TechUp Africa, and my name is Gigi. I'm the program manager for TechUp Africa, and I'm really excited that you're here. So a bit about TechUp Africa. We are a nonprofit we are an initiative under the Pan-African Women Empowerment Network, founded by Mrs. Oluwaseyi Kinde Peters, with the singular objective of empowering 100 women with the competence, confidence, and connections that they require to successfully transition and succeed in tech careers annually. So we do this through our mentorship program, which is currently in 4 phases. The first phase kicked off this year in March with the Women in Tech Conference, which we held. And then we have the application, selection, and onboarding of our mentors and our mentees, mentor guided learning with 12 different pathways for our mentees, and also which is currently ongoing. And in October, we have our virtual career fair to help these women in our cohorts land jobs and stuff. So aside TechUp Africa, under PAWEN, we also have the Aspiring Entrepreneurs Network and Aspiring Entrepreneurs Program, AEP. And if you want to learn more about that, you can check us out on our website at pawen.org. So that said, we designed the TechDevTalks, TDTs, as a monthly webinar series to empower and enlighten members of our community, to help them discuss important issues and possibly provide solutions to the problems the women face in tech. So I'll go ahead and introduce our speaker, Ashona Higgins. Please give her a virtual round of applause. All right, so Ashona is a career expert, entrepreneur, and certified technical recruiter with over 15,000 hours of recruiting experience from some of the top tech companies such as Google, Amazon. Sorry, I'm just trying to admit everyone in. Sorry, yeah. So she has experience with top tech companies such as Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Salesforce, Red Hat, and many more. She holds several certifications in recruitment, diversity and inclusion, blockchain, and crypto technology, which is really, really awesome. Let me just go ahead and, sorry for the, let me just remove the waiting room so everyone can join in. Great. So more about Shauna. She has a deep passion for helping underrepresented groups break into the tech space. She's enthusiastic about giving advice, tips, and tricks to assist with anyone's journey towards a career in technology using the knowledge she has gained for the past 16 years. Right. So Ashona is from Chicago, but she currently resides in Dallas, where she works as a tech recruiter for Amazon and oversees a business called Lady Cave, is a social space for women in the metaverse and in real life. So if you have any questions for her, please leave them in the Q&A. And thank you, Ashona, for joining us today. We're excited for all the knowledge you're going to share with us. The floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Very happy to be with you ladies and to share some insights when it comes to writing a resume. As you know, a resume is essential to finding and landing a position just in general, and especially with tech. So a little bit more expounding on my background. I actually started 16 years ago working for eBay. And I did a lot of their high volume recruitment, so more like warehouse type work. And then after about 2 years, I then transitioned into actual corporate recruiting, where I was working at different corporations in-house, all kinds of roles, not just technology. So from finance to human resources to accounting, anything that would roll underneath the corporate operations. And then, of course, with technology, I would say within the last 6 to 7 years, I've dived more into technology spaces, whether it be front end, back end, software developers, product managers, project managers, just kind of the full gamut. So I think when it comes to a resume, especially when it comes to tech resumes, there are some differences when it comes to getting the attention, so to speak, of recruiters and sourcers and decision makers of various organizations. So I don't have a fancy PowerPoint or anything. I just kind of have some points that I just want to make sure that I address. And then if you guys, I can also share this information as well with you guys once we in this talk. So let me share my screen here first. All right, can everybody see my screen okay? All right, so like I said, your resume is essential. So, you really have only one opportunity to make a first impression when it comes to your resume. So if you really want the opportunity to get the attention of a recruiter who views 200 to 300 resumes a day, there's certain things that you want to make sure are in your resume or not on your resume to kind of gain that attention. So the things I want to talk about are some main points. One is what makes a tech resume stand out, how to structure your resume for tech roles properly, what an applicant tracking system is, and then resume do's and don'ts. And then I'll also share some examples of some resumes that I've gotten over the last couple of weeks that I've been kind of saving for this talk to kind of give you guys an example of what I'm talking about, of what is good and what is not so good. So first, let's start with what makes a tech resume stand out. So first, your resume, of course, is designed to showcase your most impressive achievements, right? So when we talk about technology and we talk about just achievements and what's impressive, that's very subjective, right? So when it comes to what is impressive to a company that's looking for tech professionals, one, you want to make sure that you are upplaying your accomplishments that are quantitative. So whether that be, I built, a product in, X amount of days, and say those days is maybe 15 or 30. That's more impressive than saying if you, completed a project or you did something in 6 months. So things that would stand out to someone who's looking at your resume, those are things you definitely want to add. Any kind of awards that you might have attained within the company or even outside of the company, those are things that would qualify as being impressive to someone who's looking at your resume. So when you're designing and thinking of things that you want to put on your resume, sometimes it's really important to sit back and think of all of the things that you have been a part of, and you want to make sure that you're communicating that. There's so many times I'll do interviews with people, and I dig into their background, and by the end of the call, they've told me that they've won 5 different awards, but none of those awards are on their resume. So how would I know that you even got those awards if I hadn't asked? So making sure that you're putting those kinds of things on your resume is extremely important. Another thing that I've found to be important are bolding important words. And I'll show you guys here in a little while on some sample resumes of what I mean by that. But if I'm a recruiter and I'm looking at 400 to 500 resumes a day, I'm doing it very quickly. So I'm doing it, I would say I spend about 5 to 6 seconds on a resume, my first round going through. So having certain keywords bolded so that it's kind of drawing my eyes to it. So whether that be programming languages, anything that's going to stand out, you want to make sure that those are things that are bolded to kind of draw my eyes to those important keywords. Also, another thing is the companies that you've worked for in the past. Believe it or not, a lot of companies will pay attention to that. They want to know where have you been before? Because if one company has validated you, then that means that you must be good, for example. So if I have on my resume that I was a software engineer for Google, that is going to have a lot more weight than saying I was a software engineer at a small company that really no one knows about. So if you ever worked for or had any kind of dealings with companies that are very renowned and very popular and just a good company to work for, you want to always make sure that you're highlighting that those are companies that you've worked for in the past. Another thing is on your resume, you want to talk about, what kind of impact, you had when you were, working at that particular company. A lot of hiring managers want to see, because software engineering or just technology in general, it's very collaborative. A lot of times it takes a lot of different people to create whatever the product is. And so hiring managers want to know how you contributed in that project, whether it be a individual contributor, whether it be a manager, whether it be a project lead, making sure that whenever you are talking about what you did is not to just talk about what you did, but how you personally created impact for that particular project. I think a lot of people tend to miss that. They talk about in general what they did as a group, and you want to really talk about what you specifically did so that a manager or a hiring manager can see how you would be placed within a team of 5 or 10 or however many people are on that project. Computer programs, databases, coding tools, platforms that you're most comfortable with. That is extremely important. I'm sure just about, everyone knows in technology, the kind of databases and the coding tools that you've used are extremely important because some companies use one thing, some companies don't. So if a company is using, Java or Python, and then another company, uses Ruby Rails, they're not really concerned about if you didn't have Ruby Rails experience and you didn't place that on your resume, then you are probably going to be overlooked, and then your resume could possibly go to the bottom of the stack. So any kinds of programs and databases that you've used, you definitely want to put that on your resume, and also kind of mirroring what the job description says. So if the job description says that they want a person to have these particular skills, make sure that those skills are on your resume so that company can see that you actually have that particular experience. And then, of course, also the hard skills that you might have. So the programming, debugging, technical writing, system design, all of those things, of course, are extremely important, just as much as, the programming languages and frameworks and tools and things of that nature. Another thing is degrees. Now, there's some companies that will weight experience over a degree. But I would say in technology, 95% of companies really want you to have some form of formal training. When I was a recruiter for Google, Google will allow people to interview, and they'll put them through assessment tests if they do not have a college degree. But the problem or the caveat to that is that if they don't have a degree, they have to have a lot of years of experience, and they also have to have other compensating things, like maybe say a GitHub, where they're actually doing a lot of projects or doing coding or something like that on their own or on the side, or maybe even like hackathons or coding camps. Things like that can sometimes outweigh the actual degree, but having a degree is very, very strong. Now, when it comes to, the United States, I know there's a lot of times I will recruit people who have degrees from other countries. but then they came to the United States and they got a master's degree or they got their PhD from a university in the United States. And that is generally what most companies like to see. They like to see not just a bachelor's, but they like to see that extended education, you know, so a master's, a PhD, anything that is beyond just your bachelor's. So, you know, if I can advise or if I could suggest to anyone that's in technology, the more education, the better. And then, of course, continuing education. So, you know, if you got your degree 10 years ago, what kind of education have you had in the last 10 years to keep you up to date? Because as we know, technology is constantly changing. So to be able to show that you are continuously learning, continuously, you know, expanding your knowledge, that has a huge amount of weight when it comes to not just recruiters looking at your resume, but hiring managers as well. So, you know, I didn't really know a whole lot about GitHub before I started recruiting in technology, and Google is one company I can say that really looks at GitHub. They really want to see a person's activity when it comes to coding outside of their job. Because if you're coding outside of your job, more than likely you like it. And so a lot of companies, you know, if you're, you know, doing software engineering and you're doing a lot of coding, say 50 to 60 to 70% of coding throughout the day, they want to see that that's not just, you're not just doing it at work, you're doing it outside of work. So if you do not have a GitHub, I highly suggest getting a GitHub and actually doing as much as you can. The great thing about GitHub is I love that it shows people's how often they're coding, how often, you know, they're actually doing things outside of work. It tells you how many projects that you've collaborated with, how many people are following you. That has a lot of weight. So if you've got 20 to 30 people that are following you on GitHub, that is extremely powerful. So anyone that doesn't have a GitHub, get a GitHub. So are there any questions in regards to, you know, what makes a tech resume stand out? I think I see some questions here.
Chat. Also, if you like to ask her directly, you can raise your hand and then we'll give you like speaker access.
Yeah, that might be a little easier. Latifa.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm actually driving, so I hope it's not a bad connection.
Yes, I can hear you great.
Great. Okay, thank you so much for this. I joined in late, but I've picked up quite a few gems, so thank you so much for doing this. I know you mentioned GitHub for coders, but I'm doing a UX course, and I just wanted to know if you had any specific advice for the front-end design side of things. So just not coding, but because I know UX is very competitive now. So how do you stand out with your resume? And are there resources or platforms like GitHub where you can kind of showcase your work or collaborate with others?
You know, I don't know of anything that is specifically like.
Yeah, that's my question. Yeah,
I don't know of anything that's exactly like GitHub, but people who do front end work, I would suggest them to have their own portfolio and even their own website. So like if you, you know, get yourself a domain and actually make a portfolio of all of the front end work that you've done, all of the projects that you've been a part of. And then that can be put on your resume. So just like as a link at the top, you know, you have your name and you have maybe your LinkedIn link, and then you have maybe a lot of people who do coding, they'll have their LinkedIn and then they'll have their GitHub. But if you're doing front end work, you could say, okay, well, here's my LinkedIn, but here's my portfolio. And my portfolio, here is all the things that I've worked on, all of the things that I've been a part of. And I think that's a very good visual way to show your experience, because recruiters do go to those links. So any kind of external links that can show your work, I think can be very powerful. Hope that answers your question.
Awesome. Yes, it did. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Do I have any other questions before we go
Yeah.
on to the next?
Chris Siri is asking, talking about achievements, what about those who are just transitioning and have no achievements plus experience? How do we craft out our resume?
So if you don't have any experience, the best way to do is to show education. So if you've got certifications, if you've gotten any kind of even freelance projects that you've worked on, I know Upwork is a really good site for freelancers. So if you've ever done any kind of freelancing type work, that's just as good as actual, or even just volunteer work. If you've ever volunteered, or if you've ever part of organizations like this organization right here, if there's been any kinds of things that you have been a part of, that holds a lot of weight as well. So volunteer work, freelancing, all of those things. And then of course, if you intend on getting certifications or going back into school, you can also put that on there. So let's say you're not in school yet, but you plan on being in the next semester or the next year, you can say pursuing a computer engineering degree, will be enrolling fall of 2022. So then people can kind of see that that's your trajectory and that's the kind of the way that you're going.
Hope that answers your question. You can just like unmute
Yeah.
and ask.
Let me know. Yeah,
Yeah.
if that doesn't answer, and we'll talk a little bit more about it as we go through, because I think that's, you know, people always want to know, how do you get experience, or how do you get experience if nobody gives you the opportunity to get experience, right? And it's a very, very fine line, and that's why I always tell people to try your best to either do internships, be willing to work for free almost, you know, just to kind of prove yourself. So if you can find some kinds of roles where you can just kind of come in and show what you can do, that's just as good. And then also, some companies, not all of them, but some companies have cohorts where you can kind of go in and be like an ambassador. I know Google has them, where for like 12 months, it's almost like an internship, but it's more paid. It's a paid internship. So if you can find cohorts and things like that, tech cohorts, I would say, you know, maybe Google it and kind of see what's out there when it comes to like volunteer and internships. That would probably be the best way to go with that. All right, so let's go to the next topic. Structuring your resume. So there's really 3 resume structures that are the most popular. So there's reverse chronological, functional, and combination. Reverse chronological is what you'll probably see most people have. That's probably the most common. It's probably the most, I would say, they strongly recommend reverse chronological order. So that is what you will normally see most resumes at. Functional structure is what I think we were talking about before, where you're talking more about your skills and your strengths, more so than your actual experience. So that's going to be good for people who don't have a lot of experience, or recent graduates, or people who are, you know, going to be changing a career. So if you kind of upplay on some of the other skills that you have, and the strengths of what you can bring to any organization, sometimes those are some things that will stand out. I am a personal fan of the combination structure, where you're kind of blending the two together. So you've got, you know, your skills and your experience, but you also have your strengths and the skills as well. So if you're going to pick either one, I would say I like the combination. That's the one that kind of just speaks to me, because I feel like you get best of both worlds. But if you've been, you know, in the industry for a while, you're, you know, a seasoned professional, the reverse chronological would be just fine for you. And then if you're a new college grad, or someone that doesn't have a lot of experience, just kind of structuring your resume to show your skills and your strengths will work as well. So basically you want, of course, your name. If your name is a name that is maybe very long or hard to pronounce, sometimes it's good to maybe have your name and then in parentheses have maybe a shortened version of your name, so that when someone's calling you or reaching out to you, they don't have any issues with, you know, trying to pronounce your name, or even reluctant to call you because they think, okay, well, I can't pronounce this person's name and I don't want to be embarrassed when I call them, so I'm just going to go to the next person person. So like I said earlier, reviewing 300 to 400 resumes a day, you want to get in and get out. So having a name that is relatively easy to pronounce or even remember, I think that's important too. You want something that's memorable. Then, of course, like we spoke about earlier, your LinkedIn, GitHub, any kind of portfolio information, you definitely want that on the top header. I don't necessarily think address is really that important. If you want to put your address, that's okay. But I think we live in a world now that, everything is kind of remote. And it's really not that important for someone to know exactly where you are. Sometimes it can help you, sometimes it can hurt you. So because you don't know who's looking at your resume and how it's going to be perceived, I always tell people just take where you live off of your resume. As long as they can contact you and they know your name, that's really all that matters. So in order to contact you, right, you need a phone number or an email address. So making sure that you have that there, making sure that your phone number is working, making sure that if no one's going to answer it, it goes to a voicemail, making sure that voicemail sounds professional. Because again, this is first impression. So if you don't have an opportunity you have a great resume and you've got all the skills and a recruiter reaches out and the phone message is not professional or it just doesn't sound good, believe it or not, you could be passed over, for that opportunity just simply because of your voicemail. And then also a professional email. You want to have a professional email address. So I always suggest people to if you're a job seeker and you're really out there trying to find a role, I suggest having a completely different email address than your personal. I mean, just completely make it up. And it can even be something, catchy, like, lovetech@gmail.com or, whatever it is, but just make sure that it's something that's professional and hopefully memorable. And then after you have all of your contact information, all of that at the top, underneath that, you then want to go into your skills and what kinds of skills you have on a high level standpoint, hard skills and soft skills, like your communication and, your attention to detail, things of that nature. Education. Now, when it comes to education, I think that if you have a lot of formal education, a degree, certifications, you want that at the top. If you don't have a lot of certifications or formal education, you want the education at the bottom. The reason I say that is because if you don't have a lot of education, but you have a lot of experience, people read from top to bottom. So if I see your contact information at the top, and then I see all of the experience that you have, by the time I get to the bottom, education, it might not have as much weight because I see all of the experience that you have before the education. But if you have the education and you've gotten your degrees and certifications, you want that at the top, right underneath your skills, so that before you even get to the experience, a person can see, oh, this person is really educated and so on and so forth. So it's really going to depend on where you are when it comes to that. I do not have a formal degree from a university. I just have 16 plus years of experience. So all of my education, certifications, all of that is at the bottom of my resume. All of it, even like my blockchain, crypto, all of those certifications are at the bottom, because by the time you get there, you're going to see all of my experience, and hopefully that will be impressive enough for you to reach out, and then I can talk more about what it is that I can do for the organization. And then, of course, your experience. Now, your experience, you want to make sure that it's in reverse order. So you want the most experience, the most recent, all the way down to the least recent. I normally tell people 10 years is really all you need on your resume. Once you get past 10 years of experience, it doesn't really matter, especially in technology. Maybe in some other industries, but in technology, so much has changed in 10 years that anyone looking at your resume, anything that you did 10 years ago doesn't apply now. So it really doesn't need to be on your resume, and it causes your resume to be very long. So I always say 10 years should be the cutoff. for a person. I see resumes sometimes with people giving me their background from like 1989 to 2022. That's way too much. So 10 years is a good marker. I think it can really, show what you've done in that 10-year time frame. And then, of course, if it's less than that, that's completely fine. But, keep it at about 10 years is really the best. And then, of course, like I said earlier, awards, publications, patents, any of those things that you have, put it on your resume, especially if it has, of course, only if it has something to do with technology. If it doesn't have anything to do with technology, then it's really not necessary for you to put it on your resume. But if it's something technology related, make sure that you're adding those things to your resume, to the structure, from the structure aspect. So, any questions on structure and how your resume should be properly structured? All right, good. Looks like you guys must already know how to structure a resume, so that's
If you
wonderful.
have a question you'd like to ask, please just raise your hand and you can unmute. Okay, Latifa has a question.
Yes, Latifa.
Hi, it's me again. I just wanted to find out if I've got like an educational qualification from over 10 years ago. Can I put that in my resume? Because I know you did say if it's over 10 years, don't bother putting it in your resume.
You know what? I did not hear your question. There's a little bit of background noise.
There
Do you
is.
mind? Do you?
Type it. I'll just type it.
Okay. You type it, and then Badimi, do you want to ask your question?
Hi, yeah, yes, I do. Hello, everyone. Okay, so my question really is about, is there a fixed number of pages that your resume can have? I know you mentioned listing your certifications as well as your experience. And I can already see alongside my project, I can see my resume going beyond two pages. And I'm trying to push everything together in one page, or in maximum 2 pages. So is there like a limit? Is there a sanction for that?
I always say 2 pages is top. Once you get past 2 pages, it used to be 1 page. And I've noticed as years have gone on, it's changed, and now it's about 2 pages. I would maybe suggest some things like maybe decreasing your font. That can help. Putting the most pertinent things from like a bullet standpoint, bulleting some things. I think Latifa asked earlier about like, I don't think that was who had asked about, like, we were talking about portfolios. So if you've got some information that's beyond your resume, you can actually have something separate, like a portfolio that dives deeper into your projects in like a completely separate, like a website almost, kind of just like a little free like doc type website that you can get, and then you can put all of that extended information there. But from a resume standpoint, you really don't want to have more than 2 pages, because again, like I said earlier, reviewing 300 to 400 resumes a day, no recruiter is going to have the time to go through a 3 to 4 page resume. So 2 pages is generally the most. If you have to squeeze it to 3, okay, but I would try and keep it at 2.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Okay. Latifa left a question in the chat, and we also have a couple of other questions.
Sure, you want to go ahead and read them to me?
Okay, so Latifa is asking, can I add my education qualification from over 10 years? 10 years
Absolutely.
ago.
Yes. You can do that, but let me tell you one thing you have to be really careful of, just in general. This is not just technology, but this is in general, is age discrimination. So unfortunately, there's companies that will, age you out and will say, okay, this person has been working for, 20, 25 years. They're going to want too much money. Or this person knows too much. And when I say too much, I mean, the inner workings of organizations. And I hate to say that a lot of times organizations don't want you to know too much. So putting your dates on your education, if it's really long ago, and someone can start doing the math and figure out how old you are, those would be the things that I would, tell someone not to put, their education. For example, let's say you're let's say you're over the age of 55 and you got your education in the 80s. Like, all I have to do is start doing the math and say, okay, this person graduated in 1979, 1980. They were probably about 18, 19. That was X amount of years ago. Oh, this person is near retirement. If this person's near retirement, is that organization really going to be interested in bringing someone in that's getting ready to retire in 2 to 3 years? So that would be the only thing I would say when it comes to putting dates when it comes to graduation on your resume. Hope that answers your question.
I think maybe she could respond in the chat. So another question is, please, how do we structure our CVs? What kind of structure is most preferable?
For what? I'm sorry. For the which one?
Could you guys if it's possible for you to unmute and ask the question directly, that would be awesome. So you can get the context.
A CVC? I think I heard you say CVC.
The CVs, resumes, CVs.
Oh yeah. So the structure would be, I get that. So the structure for any resume or CVs, it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be more of a combination structure. So you have your name at the top. You then have your LinkedIn, GitHub, your portfolio information next. Then you have your contact information. So if someone's interested in you, how are they going to be able to reach out to you? So that's either your phone or your email address or both. And then underneath that is where you're going to go through and do your skills, education, depending upon if you've got an education or not. So skills, education, and then the actual experience. So the different companies that you worked for and what you've done at those companies. And then of course, at the very bottom would be your awards, your publications, things of that nature. And when we get towards the end of this talk, I actually have some resumes that I'm going to show you guys, share with you guys so that you can kind of see the structure of some resumes that there's a couple of them. There's an internship resume I'm going to show you guys, a resume of a person who just was recently hired at Amazon for a software developer engineer 2. And then also a resume that is not necessarily a great resume to have. And that's one of those resumes that's 3, 4, I think like 4 or 5 pages long. So, yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
Did I get
If
them
that
all?
answers your question, please leave it in the chat. We have like two or so other questions.
Yeah.
You're asking, should I go ahead or we could leave it towards the end?
No, that's okay. What if I don't have a degree related to? Okay, so you don't have a degree related to computer science, and that's okay. But what you are going to need to do is try and. The great thing about nowadays that it didn't exist, say 5 years ago, there's a lot of certifications you can get online. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. But I would suggest if you do not have a degree in computer science, that you find some kinds of certifications or programs that you can find that's going to give you that education to show that, okay, this person didn't have a degree in it, but they do have a degree, which does have weight, even if it's not a computer science degree. So you will more than likely need to have something else outside of your degree. If you don't have a computer science degree, you're going to need to have something else. So search out some certifications that you can possibly get in relation to whatever side of technology you're interested in, because technology is such a vague term. So whatever you're interested in, try and do those certifications and don't be all over the place. So if you want front end, stick with front end certifications. If you want back end, stick with back end related certifications. If you're all over the place, you start to look kind of scattered, and then companies start wondering, okay, what does this person want? They're all over the place. And that can sometimes be to your detriment.
Hope that answers your question. So I know Olua Paul is asking, how do you know you are ready for the next stage? For example, applying for internships or seeking a job.
When you say ready for the next stage, applying for internships or seeking, how do you know when you're ready? I think, that's kind of hard to say, you know, when you know that you're ready. I think, does anybody ever know when they're ready to do something? I mean, I think the best thing to do is to put your best foot forward, make sure that whatever it is you're seeking, that you've done your due diligence and research. Again, the internet is so open that anything you want to learn or anything you want to know how to do, you can just essentially research it. And then another thing sometimes it's helpful is if you think you want to do something specific in technology, get on LinkedIn and see if you can connect with people who are doing that job or that role, and reach out to them and say, hey, I'm interested in doing XYZ. I noticed that you've been with this company for, you know, a long time. How did you get into it? What are some things that you could suggest to me? People, believe it or not, are very helpful when it comes to you reaching out and asking certain things about their career. So I think sometimes that's the best way to kind of find out if it's going to be a good fit for you. Another good thing is like getting on YouTube and putting in like the day in the life of a UX designer, or a day in the life of a project manager for XYZ company, and see if there's people who have talked about their experience, because you're going to get a lot more truthful feedback than going to a company. A company is going to tell you what they think you want to hear, right? So you have to sometimes go and talk to people who are actually doing the job that you want, and then make sure it's something that you're interested in actually doing. Because I think that sometimes people think that they want to do something and they don't really know what's all involved. It just sounds good, or it looks good, or it pays good. And then they get into the job and they find out, wait a minute, this isn't even what I want to do, after they've spent hundreds of dollars on certifications and testing and all of this. So I think the best thing to do is kind of just search within yourself and seeing what skills you feel that you're good at, and then talking to others, and then hopefully getting some good insight on if it's going to be a good fit for you and what you're looking for. Did I answer all of them? Okay, I think that's it. All right, good. So the next thing is applicant tracking system. So applicant tracking systems is a database that all companies use to capture resumes. And it's essentially when you go online and you apply for a job, your resume, all of your information goes into like a pipeline. And then a recruiter or a sourcer is the one of that company goes behind, and they go in and they check to see all of the people who've applied. So when it comes to an applicant tracking system, it's very important that that structure of your resume be good, because if it's not a good structure, the system will kick it out. And sometimes you won't even get an email. You won't even know that the system has even kicked the resume out, because they won't tell you. Like, for example, I've opened up I've gone to an applicant tracking system. I get there in the morning and I open up to see all the people who've applied to a particular requisition or a particular job. And I open up and I see that the person's resume is all jumbled up. So they might have had some kind of program, or they were maybe trying to get fancy with their fonts, and it caused just the whole resume is just all jumbled. I honestly do not have the time to reach out to the person and say, hey, I received your resume, but it's all jumbled up. I can't read it. I don't have time to do that. So essentially what I usually do is I just go to the next resume. So you have to be really careful about making sure that your structure is it's a pretty conservative structure. It's not too, extra with all these different colors and fonts and, designs, and it doesn't look good when it comes to an ATS system. Now, if you're going to actually hand out your resume to someone, a physical copy of your resume, then you can maybe get a little jazzy if you want with the fancy fonts and the colors and all of that. But when it comes to an ATS system, you want to stay really, really conservative with your structure so that it doesn't get kicked out. So every company has, generally Google and Amazon, they have their own proprietary ATS system. So they have their own thing that they've designed, but in Facebook as well, or Meta. But most companies, they use just like a basic ATS system, which would either be like iCIMS or Workday. They're all different. Another reason a lot of these applicant tracking systems exist is to attain information like diversity information. So I'm not quite sure how things are in Africa and how things work when it comes to diversity and whatnot. But in the States, that diversity thing is really big. They want to hire so many women, so many African Americans, so many Latinas, so many Native Americans. And so all of that information is captured through the applicant tracking system. Some people choose not to identify because they feel like I'm going to be discriminated against if I tell them I'm female. I'm going to be discriminated against if I tell them what my race is or my background. So some people decline to answer. If it were me, or when it's me, I don't usually answer. I don't usually answer those questions when it comes to race and ethnicity and gender. Because number one, because I want people to assess me on my skills. I don't want to be put into a basket of African Americans because we need more African Americans in our organization. So we're going to call Ashana, and because we see that she's African American, and we want her because then I become a token, and then I don't become as valued. And then I wonder how I'm going to truly be treated once I'm actually in the job. So I am one that does not, respond to that. But again, I don't know how it is in Africa and how things are when it comes to that. If you're applying to positions in the US, I would probably suggest to decline answering that information. But again, it's up to you. But that is why the applicant tracking system is really there, is so that they can capture that diversity information. And then, of course, it be a system where recruiters can kind of go in and see how many people have applied to a position, so on and so forth. So, I always tell people it's really up to you on what you want to fill out, but that is what these applicant tracking systems are, and they're huge. So it's the meat of talent acquisition is an applicant tracking system, because not only does it track the resume that you send, but it also tracks the life of you moving through the company. So your interviews are all tracked. So the time you interview, who you interviewed, any assessments that you take, all of your records are in that database. And usually for about 5 years is how long they usually keep it in the database. So if you go to a company today and you apply and let's say you're not hired, a lot of companies will have like a 6-month or a 12-month waiting period. So there is no like, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and try and apply next week. They won't remember. They will remember because all your information is in the applicant tracking system. So it can be to your advantage and it can be to your disadvantage. I think from an advantage standpoint, it can help because it gives the history of what you've done at that company. At Google, if I'm not mistaken, I heard a statistic that it takes an average person 2 times to interview with Google before they actually get the job. So, and Google has a 1-year wait. So if you come in and you apply and you interview and you do your assessment and whatever, and you don't pass, you have to wait another year before you can come back. And so usually that second time around is generally a lot of times when people are hired. So a lot of these top tech companies, it's that way. I can't say it's that way for some companies that are not super huge, but from some of these really large companies, there's usually a waiting period. So applicant tracking systems are important. Just always remember with the applicant tracking system, a physical human being has to be there to extract your information. So for example, if you send your resume to a company, and let's say that talent acquisition, let's say that company only has 1 recruiter. It's a small company and they only have 1 recruiter, and that recruiter is doing everything. So they're doing the interviewing, they're doing the negotiation. They're just really spread thin. If you send your resume and you apply on a job on Monday, and you don't hear anything for 4 to 5 days, there's nothing wrong with ever following up. I always tell people following up is huge because number one, maybe your resume didn't come through the applicant tracking system. Remember I was telling you guys earlier how if it's all jumbled up, it gets kicked out. You don't get any kind of notification it's been kicked out. So following up to find out, hey, did you receive my resume? Following up also shows interest. And companies, unfortunately, are a little egotistical. They want people to know that, they want people to be interested in them. So to follow up is showing that you're interested and that you're engaged. If you're wondering who to follow up with, get on LinkedIn. Get on LinkedIn, put in the company's name, and find someone in talent acquisition, find someone in recruiting, and just say, hey, I applied on this day. They should be able to get into that applicant tracking system, pull your name, and see exactly where you are in the process. Most recruiters have metrics that they have to meet. So they have to have so many hires a month or they lose their job. So you calling a recruiter after you've applied and you don't hear anything back, calling that recruiter to say, hey, I applied on this day. Can you check and see if my resume? That recruiter might really need a hire because they're really close to maybe their goal, and you happen to be that person that could help them meet their goal. They're going to help you, and they're going to do whatever they can to get you through the door because it helps them. So always keep that in mind. I would say 75 to 80% of all the jobs I've ever gotten were from follow-up, from just strictly me just following up. Now, you don't want to be a bugaboo. You don't want to call every week, right? But following up 1 to 2 times, don't ever be shy about that. It's actually it's one of the most underrated things that people, I think, don't even think to do. So if it's a job that you really want and you apply and you don't hear anything back, it might not be because your resume is not good or that your skills aren't good. It just might mean the recruiter's too busy, they don't have a recruiter, or your resume was kicked out. So follow up, follow up, follow up. So any questions about applicant tracking systems?
Okay, we have a question from, okay, I don't want to like mispronounce your name, so I'll just go ahead with the question. Is it okay to reply a mail from an organization immediately you apply that says something like, we received your application and we will review and give you feedback?
No, generally that is an email that is not coming from a specific person. It's an automated generated email. So a lot of times what happens is so when you have an applicant tracking system, a recruiter, let me tell you the process. So I'm a hiring manager and I have a need for a embedded engineer. So I go through all of the proper, hierarchies to get this position approved. Once the position is approved, it's an actual requisition. It then gets tagged to like a recruiter or a sourcer or somebody. That recruiter or sourcer talks to the hiring manager and says, okay, I see that the job description says you want X, Y, Z. What are some other things that you're looking for? The recruiter will then notate that. Then the requisition then becomes live on the ATS system. So the ATS system has a lot of automatic things that will go out so that a recruiter isn't bogged down. So when you apply, it's an automatic message that will come back and say, hey, we received your information, we're reviewing it, we'll get back to you. The follow-up comes when, let's say 4 to 5 days has gone by, give it a week. I say a week. A week has gone by, you haven't heard from anybody. At that point, you don't want to reach back out to that particular email because it's probably going to go to a black hole. It's not going to go back to the actual recruiter who is assigned to that particular requisition. So that's when you want to actually get on LinkedIn. You haven't heard from anyone? Get on LinkedIn, go to the company at the very top, put in the company's name, and then put in the title of the position that you're looking for and see if you can find a manager or you can find a recruiter or a talent acquisition person, and then reach out to them directly on LinkedIn and say, hey, I applied on this day. If you can, give them the day, because then they can go back in kind of quickly and see, okay, this person applied on this day. And then that way they can kind of give you some more feedback on where to go and what to do. from there. So yeah, that would probably be the best.
Okay, hope that answers your question.
Yes,
We have like a
Victoria.
few minutes more. Okay, you want to go ahead with the question?
Yeah, so Victoria, meant previous event. Yes, if the certifications are something that applies from like a technology standpoint, but maybe not to what you're applying for, that's completely okay. Because it's showing that you have interest and you're someone that's constantly getting educated. But if it's a certification, let's say a cosmetology certification, right? Or a certification to, deliver food. I mean, those are things that are not applicable, then you would not want to have that on your resume because it just kind of muddies the water a little bit. Oh, I didn't see that follow up. Let's say you privacy did a course in UX, but it's not a special you have. Oh, I would still put that UX on your resume because that's showing that you're diversified in your skill set. So if you know some front end and some back end, you're kind of like a full stack. That's completely okay because some companies, they like that. They like to know that you've got those diverse skills, and it just shows that you are really engaged in just technology in general. So no, I would definitely keep that UX certification on your resume. I already did the 3 stages again since then, and then college should promise to follow up with some response chat at someone with the company on LinkedIn, but so nothing should. The 3 stages of the interview, more than likely, if you've gone that far and you're not getting any response, unfortunately, I hate to tell you this, but I would probably move on. I think it's probably one of the most frustrating, most unprofessional things for a recruiter to not follow up with someone to let them know what the status is. Unfortunately, there's a lot of recruiters that are like that. I want to say that a lot of times it's because they're busy or because they don't know how to approach it and they don't want to tell someone bad news. So they just avoid it. And me personally, that's like one of my biggest pet peeves. Only because I've been a job seeker, even though I've been a recruiter for 16 years, I'm 45. So I've also been a job seeker. I've had regular jobs and it's nothing more frustrating than to spend your time and your effort to apply to a job, go through all of the steps, do everything that you're supposed to do, not hear anything, because now you're left wondering, you don't know, and did I do good? Did I not do good? And so for me, I always try and reach out to a person and say, hey, you weren't selected, but here's some positive, encouraging feedback on something that can help you in your next role. Unfortunately, not all recruiters do that. Not all, talent acquisition professionals do that. I would say if you're following up and they're not responding, more than likely they don't want confrontation and they don't want to tell you that we've gone on to the next person. Most recruiters, most talent acquisition people, if they want you, they're going to make sure they get you, because remember I was saying earlier, that's how recruiters are tracked. That is how they're able to keep their job. And then if you are dealing with a headhunter, someone that is not with a company and they are kind of like an agency, they're compensated on you getting the job. So if you don't get the job, they don't eat. So they're very, usually headhunters are very, they're all about making sure you get that role. So if you've gone through all of that and you haven't gotten a response, I would probably move on. And to be honest, I wouldn't want to work for a company like that. I wouldn't want to work for a company who doesn't have the time to follow up with me after I've gone through 3 stages of interviews. That is kind of showing you who they are as a company. I would probably go the other way just off top, because you get the job. And, I always say, if people show you who they are, believe them. And to me, if you've gone through all of that and nobody has followed up with you to tell you one way or another, or to say thank you for applying, but we've decided to go another route, if they haven't given you the decency and the respect to do that, I would totally move on and find another company who would be appreciative of your time and the skills that you're bringing to the table. So. Okay. All right, so I think that's all for questions. All right, so let's go down to some resume do's and don'ts here. All right, so listing every programming language. This is a huge no-no. So if you have a particular, not even so much programming language, any kind of technology and knowledge you have, make sure that you're really intentional about what it is you're putting on your resume versus putting every single programming language that exists, because then you start to look, it's not believable. It starts not to look believable. Companies want to see, okay, what was this person really concentrating on, versus having every programming language listed under the sun. So you definitely want to make sure that you're not doing that. Experience. Now, years and not months. So sometimes putting the years of experience you have. So for example, I worked at Google from March 2000 to September 2001. I always suggest people don't put the months and just put the year, because when you put the months, let's say, for example, you were only at that company for 2-3 months, it might not have as much weight versus if you say I was at a company from 2000 to 2001, well, in my mind, I don't know if you were there for 3 months, 2 months, 6 months. I'm probably going to think you were there for at least a year. And so that is the purpose of a resume, is to get someone to call you, is to reach out to you. You can then start selling yourself and telling people, okay, well, I was only at that position for a couple months because it was a contract role or because it was a project, so on and so forth. So keeping the months and just keeping the years on your resume is going to be more enticing to someone, especially if you don't have a long period of time that you've been with a company. I think we talked about the no address earlier. So you want to, of course, have some contact information, but your physical address is not important. So, don't even worry about it. And sometimes it can hurt you, so if it's a company that is remote, but they want someone that's maybe local to that local area, but it's a remote position, they don't really have to know that you're not local. I mean, as long as you can still do the job, where you are, and it's a remote job, you want to make sure that, having an actual address could get that recruiter to say, oh, they're not local, and then move over to the next person, versus them not seeing that information and then them calling you. Then you can actually have a conversation and say, well, I'm not local, but I'm not, very far away. I'm only a couple hours away, or I can maybe do a situation where I can travel into the location every, quarter or every couple months. So keeping that address, I think, is huge, especially if you're coming to the States. So if you're wanting a job that's in the States and you're not in the States, and they state that it's a remote position, you can live anywhere in the world, I would not put, what continent, what country, I would not put that on my resume. Just contact information and that's it. Adding a blurb next to the company. So let's say you're working for a company that's not really well known. And no one knows what this company does, for example. Let's say it's a semiconductor company, but nobody really knows that that's what that company does. It's very important that if it's a company that no one knows, is to put a blurb next to the company of what that company does. So if it's, XYZ, company, if it's a semiconductor company, you're going to put that next to the company's name on your resume, so that if I'm a company, let's say I'm a semiconductor company, and I'm looking for someone who has experience, you would be somebody that I would contact before someone else, because you clearly are coming from the same industry. So the only way someone would know that is if you told them. So if it's not like a Google, everyone knows who Google is, everyone knows who Amazon is. You don't have to do it for stuff like that. But if you're working for companies that are not well known, put a very small, short little blurb of who the company is, and that will definitely help you as well. I think we talked about the education in the place at the bottom versus the top, depending upon if you've got a lot of education or if you don't have a lot of education. So a lot of education, it's going to be at the top. Not so much education, you're going to put it at the bottom. We talked about the pages, so no more than 2. Reviewing for errors and typos. This is huge. I think that sometimes, you know, you can have all of your things spelled correctly, right? You do a spell check and you see everything is spelled correctly, but is it correctly written as far as, is it readable? Does it sound right? Does it flow right? And sometimes when you're doing your own resume, you've looked at it for so long, you will not catch things versus sending it to a friend. Sending it to someone who's never seen it before and say, hey, will you look at this and see if you see anything that doesn't look right? Because it's fresh eyes. And sometimes that is huge, because believe it or not, I can't say that I'm one that does this, but there's a lot of recruiters who will literally totally discount your whole entire resume if they see a typo on it. So making sure that you're reviewing your resume consistently, constantly, every time you make a change, review it. That's very, very important. And then also being intentional about researching the company that you are applying to. So sometimes people will get on a database, for example, Indeed, and they say, oh, and they just apply to every single company they see. So it might be 10 companies and they apply to all of them. They haven't researched the company. They haven't, you know, they don't know anything about the company. They just see the title and they say, oh, okay, this is a good title. This is what I want. I'm going to apply. The reason I say research the company is because sometimes if you apply to a job and that recruiter or somebody calls you, you never want to, when they say, hey, like I call you and I say, hey, this is Ashana from you know, XYZ company. I received your resume and wanted to know if you had a moment to speak. You on the other end be like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited you called. I was doing some research. I saw that you guys recently had an acquisition and you recently did this and you did that. That is going to be very impressive to anyone talking to you, because they're going to see, oh my gosh, she's done her homework. You know, she actually intentionally applied to us. She really wants to work for us. That doesn't necessarily mean you want to work for them. It just means you just did your due diligence and you research. So sometimes having you know, a kind of like a little spreadsheet of all of the companies that you've applied to, and kind of like maybe some high level bullet points about the company. So if they call you, then you can already be prepared and you don't have to say. The worst thing as a recruiter is when I call a person and they say, who is this? What company? What do you guys do? Because now I'm turned off, because now I see, oh, okay, you were just blind sending resumes. You don't care about this company. There's no vested interest here. And so I'm usually just turned off at that point. So being knowledgeable helps, because it also allows you to build rapport with whoever you're interviewing with. Just like anything, when people like you, they're going to do whatever they can to help you. And so building that rapport with that recruiter is huge, because they're the gatekeepers. They're the ones that's going to get your resume to the next stage. So if you can build rapport by, you know, with those initial phone calls, and that initial phone call being a good resume, then it's going to really help you, you know, get to the next stage. And so that's just really being prepared. And if you have an opportunity to review who that, you know, if you're talking to the recruiter and they tell you their name and you're quick and you can get on LinkedIn and you can look at their name and you can do a little research about them while you're on the phone, that's even better, because then you can now start pulling things out from their background and say, oh, I noticed that you graduated from so-and-so. I graduated from there too. So you can find some commonalities, and then that helps build that rapport, which now that recruiter likes you, and that recruiter is going to make sure that you get to the next stage, because it helps them out too. So no pictures of yourself on a resume, no pictures, no personal information, personal details, how many kids you have, your age, any of that stuff, keep it off of your resume. That's a huge flag, and it will get your resume to the bottom of the stack, at least here in the States. I've never recruited in Africa or any country in Africa, so I don't really know how it's perceived, but I know in the United States, no personal information should be on your resume whatsoever. So make sure if you have that to remove it. Tailoring your resume to the job, very important. That you really should not have just one resume. You really should have multiple resumes, because, you know, some resumes are not going to speak to every position that you apply to. So if you've got multiple resumes, it really helps. Now, me personally, when I was a job seeker, I had a different resume for every job. Every job I applied to, I had a different resume because I felt like I wanted my resume to speak specifically to that job. So I would do the resume, I'd have, the basic structure, but then I would save it with the company's name. So when the company called me and they asked me questions, I could pull up that specific resume to speak to it. Because some companies say they want XYZ. Well, that XYZ might not be what the next company wants. So sometimes you have to change it and tweak it. So I always tell people, you don't have to be as crazy with it as me and have every resume for every company, but have a good 2 to 3 different resumes that's going to speak to different things. And then, like I said, make sure you're saving it with the company's name so you know which resume the company received. Let's see, I think font size, you want to keep it at about, I have a typo there, about 10 to 12. You don't want really big font. You don't want it really small either. I would say 9 would be the smallest that I would go when it comes to, like, if you're trying to consolidate everything onto 2 pages, don't go more than under 9, because then people are going to be like squinting and trying to see what it is that you have. So, 9 is pretty small, but 10 to 12 is pretty average. I like to do a varied font sizes. So like my titles might be a larger font size than the bullets on the resume. So that's something that people can kind of just do on their own, and you kind of use your own judgment there. And then of course, when it comes to the fonts, you want something very conservative, which is going to be your Times New Roman. That's the most widely used. You can use these other ones here if you wanted to. What you don't want is anything fancy. None of that fancy schmancy stuff. Also, the ATS could potentially kick it out. So you want something that's going to be very conservative, that everyone is pretty used to looking at, and nothing that's going to strain the eyes. Because again, if I'm looking at 300 to 400 resumes, my eyes can't take too much. So, having something that's pretty consistent, having the font sizes that are consistent, it really does help out. So let's really quickly, I just wanted to say this really quick, that resumes are an art, not a science. So sometimes you have to do resumes, you have to, do your resume over and over again before you get the perfect resume. I always say a good gauge is if you send your resume out to say 10 plus companies and nobody's calling you back, there's something wrong with your resume. Whether it be a typo, whether it be a structure, whether it be you're not applying to the right jobs that are speaking to your skills or experience. 10 plus resumes and not getting one bite is generally a good rule of thumb to pay attention to. So keep track of that. So, if you say to yourself, I'm going to send out 10 resumes today, and you're not getting any feedback from those 10 resumes, you might need to do some tweaking before you send out another 10, because you don't want to send out a resume to 30 different employers, right? And then after 30 employers, you find out that your resume is not that good. You can't redo your resume and send it back to those employers, because employers have already seen it. So you want to kind of do it in chunks. So if you do 10 at a time, then you can kind of see, is this a good resume, or do I need to tweak it before you send it to the next 10? So that's one of those things I tell people all the time, that don't expect to, have a perfect resume and it be the perfect one the first time, because it might not be. And then also, I just saw this amazing, I was just doing some research, and I saw that Microsoft is planning on, hiring quite a few people, full-time African developers by 2023. I don't know if that's information that you guys know of, but if that's the case, and you're really interested in Microsoft, I would really look at Microsoft as a company and start looking at some of their careers and look at the job boards and look at some of the jobs that they're currently looking for. And if you don't have the skill set now, you've got 6 months to, a year to potentially get that experience. Because if this is something that they're looking to do, that if Microsoft is going to be doing that, trust other companies will fall right behind them. So that was just something I noticed, and I figured I would share it with you guys. Do I have any questions on this piece here before I show you guys some sample resumes? before we, no questions, I don't see any here in the chat.
If you have any questions, please raise your hand so you can speak, please.
All right, so here's some sample resumes here. Can you guys see the full screen? Or is it cut off on you? You guys see here. Okay, so this person was hired. If you look for a software developer role at Amazon, and if you look here, you know, of course, they've got their information on top. They've chose to put their address, which of course is fine. You see all this information here, their LinkedIn, you know, their email address, phone number. Then you see their summary. The summary is important because you want to see, you know, exactly. I'm sorry, this person actually became an intern. You see this person right here was looking for it. So they bolded what it was that they were looking for. So as a recruiter, my eyes are going to go to that because it's bolded. It stands out. So this person already tells me what they're looking for. They're looking for an internship, and you know they're telling me exactly what they're involved in here. You see their education. As you see, this person actually had an undergrad from China, but then it looks like they came here to the States and they got some more education here in the US. And then their experience, this person, of course, chose to put their months down. And of course, you can totally do that. It's not something you don't, that you can't do, but they've got their months here. It looks like because they've just been an intern, they've actually put that there. So they've only been an intern, so they really don't have a lot of hardcore experience. But you notice here they don't have any organization experience, but their experience is internships. So they've got all of that listed and when they did their internships and the things that they did. You see very, very short bullets, just 2 to 3 bullets for each one of these. So nothing just ridiculous that causes me to have to, you know, look and read too much. They've got all of the things that are important here, what their the different services that they've used. And then you see here down at the bottom, the languages and awards that they have. One page, nice, clean, nothing too crazy, very standard. This is a great resume for someone that's an intern. Right. I'm going to go to this person. This is probably one of my favorite resumes that I've seen in a very long time, just simply because I like the structure. It's has a little bit of a design piece to it. I'm actually surprised that ATS didn't kick this out, but it wasn't kicked out. This person was actually hired. They have their information over here to the side. They've got their name. And then what I like about this is if you look at the side here, their technical skills, you see how they've got the bar here. So that's basically saying, I'm really good at Java. I'm decent at JavaScript. I know Python. I'm not the best at it, but you know, I'm knowledgeable of it. So that gives me a snapshot that tells me this person, this is this person's strongest language right here. And it's just telling me that from this graph. So I don't even have to wonder, that's what the graph tells me. And so I like that as a recruiter. All these frameworks on here, they don't list too many, but they just list, you know, some high level ones that they've done, some web technologies, the database technologies. If you notice here, they put their education at the bottom. So again, they coming from China, but then they got their master's here in the States. At the top, they've got their work experience. If you notice here, which a lot of companies like, is they like to see progression within a company. So you see they first came in as a software engineer. They were a software engineer for about a year, and then they moved into a senior software engineer. So that's going to tell the recruiter or even a hiring manager, okay, this person's skills became better as they were there longer. So if you're at a company and you have moved and progressed at that particular company, that has a lot of weight versus, let's say you've been at a company for 10 years and you stayed in that exact same position for 10 years, that is not going to read very well, because that's basically saying you didn't progress. Why didn't you progress? Now, of course, there could be reasons why, right? Maybe it's because there was nowhere for you to move up to. Maybe the person that's above you, they haven't retired yet. And so the position isn't even available. But the problem with that is that from a resume, I can't tell that. I would only know that if I called you and talked to you and then you told me. So when you've been at a company for a long time, find some kind of way to show that you were given more responsibilities, so maybe you came in at one level, but then you progressed to a senior level. That shows progression, and that's huge. So this person looks like they've only been working at this one company. So this is all the experience they have, but then they have here in, bold, the different things that they've done. And then of course here, the other experience that they have, very short bullets, just 3 bullets a piece. I don't know if the person's still on the call or not, but the person who said that they had a very long resume with a lot of bullets, I'm sure this person did more than just this, but they have kind of segmented it to where it's just 3 bullets. So it's just giving the high level for these projects that they worked on. So this person was hired. This is probably, like I said, one of my favorite resumes because it's clean. It's one page. I feel like I got all of the information I need to get from it. And again, I really, really like this over here. This is a really good snapshot. All right, so now let me show you guys. This is the last one I'll show you. Okay, so this resume is not so good. Now, I'll tell you the good things about it. First of all, the great things about it is you see how they bolded some of these key terms right here. So when I pull this resume up and I see, my eyes are going to go to this. It's going to go here. It's going to go here. It's going to go all of these places. Okay, this person is mentored. Okay, this person is adaptable. This person is flexible. All of these things are great, right? Got the hands-on experience. They put all of this here. They bulleted and bolded it. I'm going to pay attention to that. Professional summary. If you notice here, this person, how they've decided to do their experience is they've decided to put the names of the company, and then I'll show you here in a second as we go down. But you see, it's kind of jumbled up. It's kind of hard to read. Versus he says currently working at software, versus taking all that out, the currently working at, and just having the software engineer video, the state, the city, and all of that. So all of this extra is just extra for no reason. And it just kind of muddies up the resume a little bit. And you see the education is here. They've got good education, but none of it is in the States. And unfortunately, in the States, in the US, they really want to see that you've gotten some education here in the United States. So this person, no education in the United States. Not to say they wouldn't be considered, but I can say that their resume might not be at the top of the stack. Okay. Now here we got software technologies. You see all of these software technologies this person lists. That's a lot. That's a lot, and it's not, doesn't look like it is specific to the role that this person's going for. So I can almost guarantee that this person sends this resume out to every job they apply to, which they should not do that. It should be specific to that specific job. So you have all that. Then you go down, and now he's taking this professional experience, this summary, and now he's putting it down here and breaking it down into the bullets. This is way too much. Can you guys see all that? This is way too much. So I'm sure it's great information, but I don't have time. This is just so much. I'm gonna be honest. If I saw this resume, I would more than likely, I would say, okay, this person's decent, but I'm gonna go over to someone else because I don't have time to look at all of this. Now, I can't say I won't come back to it. Like if I've got a position and all the people I go through, none of them are good fits, I might come back to this person because I don't have anybody else, right? But they're not going to be my first pick. And then not only that, but a lot of hiring managers don't like to see this either because it's not specialized to them. So this would be a resume, and this person actually was passed on. The hiring manager, they've got great experience. As a matter of fact, they got all the key words, but the hiring manager was not interested in this person. So, so this would be a resume that would be an example of it not being the best. Now, lastly, I want to show you guys. So here is Google Careers, and I think I picked one for Kenya. Okay, so this is a position, General Manager, Android Platforms and Ecosystems. So you see this position, you think, okay, I've got some Android experience. Let me see if this is going to be good for me. So you look at these minimum qualifications and you see if you have these, right? These minimum qualifications, most companies, you got to have this. You got to have it, or you won't be considered. And they have to do that to stay fair. Right now, again, never recruited in Africa, so I don't know what kind of employment, equal employment, type of things are in Africa. But in the United States, they have to be consistent with the qualifications. So if I say a person has to have a minimum bachelor's degree, I can't go out here and hire someone with a high school education, because then it's not fair. It's not equal. So whenever you see these minimum qualifications, know that that's what you have to have. So if you have it, but you don't have it on your resume, put it on your resume. So like experience in distributed systems. It doesn't say how much experience that you need. It could be 6 months, right? It can even be 2 months. It doesn't say, it just says experience. So if you've got distributed systems and mobile experience, you want to put that on your resume. Even if it was at a position, you did 5 years ago, still put it on your resume. Because as a recruiter, when I'm looking for resumes that fit this, that's what I'm going to put in my search, my algorithms, my Boolean, to pull out all the resumes. Because if I got 5,000 resumes, all 5,000 resumes aren't going to have distributed systems and mobile in it. So I have to actually put distributed systems so that it will pull the resumes that have that. So let's say, for example, you have distributed systems experience, but you don't have it on your resume, then your resume will not pull up in my queue. So you want to make sure that you're putting these particular keywords in your resume so that I know, so that you'll pull up in my queue when I get ready to look for people. So you want to look at all of these things that are in minimum qualifications. Now, the preferred qualifications are of course, nice to haves. So when you look at a qualification and you see all of these things that are preferred, if you don't have them, that's okay, because they're preferred. But if you do have them, put them on there and bold them. You want to make sure they see it, because now you have more than the minimum qualifications. You've got extra stuff. So any of these things that you see on preferred qualifications, make sure that it's on your resume somewhere. So you remember how I said earlier, some things are not going to apply to every job. So this particular job, they want you to have experience leading cross-functional teams. Well, another company that you apply to might not have that. So you don't really need that to be on your resume. So that's sometimes how you can shorten your resume and kind of structure it a little bit better as well, is by looking at the preferred qualifications and then the minimum qualifications and structuring your resume around those two things. Because if you do not have experience on your resume saying that you've done certain things, nobody's going to believe you. So if you say, okay, I've got experience in distributed systems, and let's say you didn't put it on your resume and I call you, and I start talking to you and you say, yeah, and I've done distributed systems, and I'm going to look at your resume and I'm going to say, well, you didn't put it on your resume. Do you really have distributed systems experience? So now I'm doubtful because you didn't put it on your resume. So make sure that the things that you see on these job descriptions, if you see this minimum qualifications, make sure that your information is reflecting that. And that is all. Let's see, I think I've got, oh, well, I just deleted it, but that's all right. All right, so that is it. Do I have any questions?
I think Bidemi had a question earlier. She was raising her hand.
Who was that?
Bidemi. I don't know if she's still on the call.
She's still here?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, so while we were reviewing one of the resumes earlier, you mentioned the person moving from a role to a different role. So, that person moved from a junior role to a senior role, just as she put it. So say, for example, you actually moved roles, let's say between teams, different units, does that count as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And make sure that you that you're showing that in the chronological order, so someone can see that, oh, okay, this person has experience in this team and then they move to this. Yeah, that has a lot of weight, because companies in general, they want to know that you can work in a team environment and you can be collaborative. And so when they see that you've been in a collaborative environment prior or before and you were successful in it, then that's going to tell them, okay, this person is a collaborative person. They're going to work in a good collaborative environment. And I noticed that technology is like that more than anything, any other industry. It's all about working in teams and being able to work in teams. So yes, absolutely. Shifting to another field, do I write my current role as part of a leader, or should I keep it out? I think that it depends. If it's a role that is still within technology, you definitely want to mention it. It doesn't have to be the exact same thing, but if it has something dealing with technology, you definitely want to show that. If it's not, you want to show that you are doing something that is centered around technology. So whether it be, coming up with a portfolio, whether it be like the GitHubs, or whether it be any kind of volunteering or organizations that you're a part of, all of those things have a lot of weight, because it's showing that you're engaged, you're interested, you want to learn more. And so companies are, really, they look at that, and that weighs a lot, that weighs heavy, most definitely. Work ethic, being able to, I guess it just kind of really depends on where you are in the tech space, because some positions are, like software developing is going to be different than, say, UX design. I think probably one of the main things is, like I said before, being collaborative, being hardworking. Not, there's really no hard stop time. I mean, no company wants to hear that you're going to come in at 8 and leave at 5. Even if you're going to come in at 8 and leave at 5, they don't want to hear that that's what your intentions are. They want to hear that you're willing to put in whatever work is needed to roll out the new project or the new product or whatever it is that you're doing. So, having that hardworking work ethic is definitely something that is good. And also being able to work in an ambiguous environment. Sometimes, I noticed with technology, especially with Google, they have assessments where you have to, do these coding assessments, for example. And one thing that will knock you out and not get you onto the next level is not asking clarifying questions, and just, going in and solving a coding problem and not asking any questions around it. So whenever in technology, I'm noticing in general, you're sometimes working in a space where you don't really know a lot. So to ask certain questions to gain the knowledge that you need, that's looked at very, very favorably. So always be willing to ask questions to clarify what someone is talking about, what someone's meaning, to know what kind of direction to go in is very important. Someone transition. Real quick about the project manager, try your best to get a PMP certification. PMPs are weighted very, very heavily. Sometimes there's a lot of different qualifications, of course, that you have to have, to go get to sit for a PMP, but make that a goal. Because to be a project manager, to have that PMP behind you will definitely take you to the top of the stack. If not a PMP, like a black belt or a green belt or yellow belt, something like that, to show that you are familiar with projects and project timelines and so on and so forth. Someone's transitioned to tech field without formal background in STEM. Is it okay to include one more? Absolutely. I mean, you want to put that you, of course, have your bachelor's degree, because when you have, having a bachelor's degree says that in my opinion, when I see a person with a bachelor's degree, that tells me not that they're the smartest person in the world, but they had the discipline. They had the discipline and the wherewithal to finish. And discipline is huge, you know, it just in life. And so to be able to show that you went through all of the hoops that you had to go through to get your degree says a lot about you as a person. So definitely have that. But if you can have something else that shows beyond the English degree. So if you have, like I said, the certifications, see about getting on. I know there's a lot of free certifications out there, you guys. You're going to really just have to kind of dig and look and see. But if you just Google free tech courses, free or low cost or affordable tech certifications, because those certifications, you can put that with your degree and that will give you a lot of weight. Having just an English degree and not having anything else that's tech involved is not that people won't look at you, but there'll be other resumes that will overshadow yours. So if you want yours to stand out, you're going to have more than just your bachelor's in the English. So try and seek out some other certifications that you can get. I think that's all. Is that all the questions?
Any final questions? Okay. AWS often provides free certifications via AWS Sheet. Okay, it's just a comment, right?
Yes, very, very. And AWS is huge, you know, so, you know, cloud, you know, anything dealing with cloud right now is huge. So, you know, those are some of the things, and just constantly, you know, anybody that's in technology knows that technology is ever changing, right? It's like constantly changing. So the more you can stay abreast on what's going on, the more it shows that you're really in line with technology, especially the people who don't have technology degrees. So the more information you can learn on your own is going to have a lot of weight when you get to talking and speaking about it, because they're going to say, oh, okay, she's been doing her research. She's been actually studying. She knows more than just what she learned in college, you know? So, you know, you definitely use that internet and try your best to, yes, Microsoft Azure, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, all of those places are amazing to try and get. And the great thing about it is that, you know, there's a big push for diversity, you know, in tech. So that's even better when, you know, there's a lot of funding and a lot of organizations that are out there that are looking to help and diversify technology. I'm personally looking to move into the Web3 space here soon to really, you know, make sure that, you know, the Web3 space is diversified and that there's, you know, African Americans, women that are involved in Web3. So that's kind of been my passion project as of late. But I encourage you all to stick with technology. It is the future. So, you know, do your best to be a part of it in any way that you can. And I hope that if there's any other opportunities to come and chat and share my knowledge with you guys, I'll be more than happy. Just reach out and I will do what I can to make myself available.
That'll be awesome. Thank you. Is there any preferred means to reach you, like LinkedIn or?
Yeah, so yeah, you guys are more than welcome to, you know, send me a LinkedIn invite. I'll put, you know, my, just look me up. I think I'm the only Shauna Higgins on LinkedIn. So definitely find me on LinkedIn, and, you know, if you ever want to pick my brain or ask me a question or even look at your resume. If you have a resume and you're like, you know what, I have my resume, I'm getting ready to send out to a couple places. Would you mind looking at it? I'll be more than happy and be honored to check it out and give you some pointers.
That'll be awesome. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your weekend, and I hope you all stay in touch.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.
Bye.
You too. Bye.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for sticking around. And if you would like to follow up on more content around this, I see someone suggested technical interviews. So this basically is like a series that we're doing monthly to help African women in tech And if it's something you're interested in, you can follow us on our social media pages. I will share the links. So next month, we will be arranging something similar and on a topic that should be relevant to all of us. So thank you so much, and I will see you next month. Bye. And also, if you're looking for if you like to have a recording of the session, you can also check out our YouTube. I'll be uploading this later in the evening or whatever time it is for you, and you have access to the recording as well. So thank you. Bye. And stop recording.